Welcome to our channel Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. No one noticed at first, because nothing felt connected. A man disappeared. Months later, another person was gone. Then someone died in their own home. The town called it coincidence. The police called it unrelated. Life went on like nothing was wrong, but someone was watching closely. Not the killer. The pattern dates started to match. Places formed a shape. Victims shared a secret no one talked about, and when the truth finally surfaced, the town realized something terrifying. This was never random. It was planned, and whoever created the pattern had been hiding in plain sight. The town had always believed nothing truly bad could happen there. It was the kind of place where people waved from their porches and remembered each other's birthdays. The streets were familiar, the routines predictable. Everyone felt they knew what to expect from every day. That feeling of safety had been built over many years, and no one questioned it. The first incident did not disturb that belief. A man in his 40s failed to come home one evening. He had told his wife he would be late, so no one worried at first. When morning came and he still had not returned, the concern was quiet and controlled. His car was found parked near a service road outside town. There were no signs of damage. His wallet was inside. The police said adults sometimes leave without warning. Stress was mentioned, so it was the idea that he may have wanted to disappear. The case was noted, then slowly pushed aside. Life continued as normal. The seasons changed. The town moved on. Almost a year later, a young woman vanished. She worked evenings at a diner just off the highway. After her shift, she never made it home. Her car was discovered in the parking lot where she usually left it. Her phone was inside, untouched. This time, people felt uneasy. But again, there was no clear evidence of a crime. Friends said she had talked about leaving town someday. Police suggested she might have accepted a ride from someone she knew. The explanation was uncomfortable, but it allowed people to sleep at night. The town told itself these things were unrelated. A few months after that, an older man was found dead in his house. The door was unlocked. The television was on. The doctor listed the cause as natural. Still, something felt strange to the officer who first arrived. There was no sign of struggle, but there was also no clear timeline. No one could say exactly when he had last been seen alive. But without proof of wrongdoing, the case was closed quickly. Each event on its own seemed small, tragic, but not alarming. People do not expect patterns to reveal themselves immediately. They expect chaos to be loud and obvious. This was neither. Years passed. Incidents continued. A teenager who never came home from a walk. A house fire that killed a man who lived alone. A body found near the river with no clear injuries. Each time, there was an explanation that sounded reasonable. Each time, the town accepted it because the alternative was too frightening. The police station walls slowly filled with old files. Dust gathered on boxes marked as resolved or inactive. Officers changed shifts. Some retired. Others transferred. The stories faded into memory. One person remembered she worked in the local library. Her days were spent among records, newspapers, and quiet conversations. She did not deal with emergencies or crime scenes, but she noticed details. She noticed repetition. While helping someone search through archived newspapers, she came across an article about the missing man from years earlier. The name caught her attention. She remembered it. Curious, she searched for more. Another article appeared, then another. Different people. Different circumstances. But the tone felt familiar. The language used by reporters, the calm conclusions, the lack of answers. She printed the articles and read them carefully. She noticed dates first. Nearly all of the incidents happened near the end of the month. Not exactly the same day, but close enough to feel intentional. Then she noticed locations. She marked them on a simple town map. Slowly, a shape began to form. It was not random. The places were spread out, but evenly. None were too close to each other. None were in the busiest areas. Each location was quiet, often overlooked. She felt a cold sense of realization as she stared at the map. Someone had chosen these places. She kept going. She wrote down what the victims had in common. They were not famous. They were not wealthy. They did not draw attention. Most lived alone or worked late hours. They were people who could disappear without immediate alarm that details stayed with her. She started checking Old Town calendars, festival dates, football games, community events. She noticed that many incidents happened on nights when the town was busy, when people were distracted, when streets were louder and police resources were stretched thin. This was not carelessness. This was planning. The realization scared her, not just because of what it suggested, but because of how long it had gone unnoticed. Someone had been moving quietly through the town, using its habits against it. She hesitated before telling anyone. Accusing the town itself felt dangerous, but she could not ignore what she had seen. She gathered her notes and went to the police station. The officers listened politely. They looked at the map. They nodded. But their eyes showed doubt. These cases were old. Some were officially closed. Reopening them would cause panic. They told her they would review the information. Nothing happened. Days passed, then weeks. No announcements, no warnings. The town stayed calm, but she could not let it go. The pattern was too clear now, and if it existed in the past, it could happen again. She returned to the library, knowing one thing for certain. Whatever was behind those cases had not rushed. It had waited. And patience like that did not disappear on its own. The woman could not forget what she had seen. Even when the library was quiet and the town moved as it always had, her mind kept returning to the map. The dots stayed in her thoughts. She began to notice how easily people trusted the familiar, how often they assumed safety because nothing bad had happened to them personally. She continued her work quietly. She did not tell friends. She did not spread rumors. Instead, she watched. She listened. She paid attention to conversations that others ignored. When someone mentioned an old case, she remembered the details. When someone joked about how nothing ever happened in their town, she felt uneasy. Another incident occurred 2 months later. A man who lived alone failed to show up for work. He was known for never missing a day. When police entered his house, everything looked normal. His bed was made. His keys were on the table. There was no sign of forced entry. The explanation came quickly. A medical emergency. An accident. The case followed the same path as the others. This time the woman added another to the map. She checked the date. End of the month. She checked the town calendar. A large public event had taken place that evening. Fireworks, music, crowds. The streets near the incident were busy. Until late at night, the pattern was growing. Stronger, she decided to speak to someone else. Not the police this time. She contacted a local journalist who had grown up in the town. Someone who remembered the past and still cared about it. They met quietly. She showed him the articles, the map, the dates. At first he laughed nervously. Then he stopped smiling. He asked careful questions. He took notes. He promised to look into it. But days passed, and nothing was published. Later, he admitted the editor did not want to run the story. It was too vague, too unsettling. It could hurt the town's image. The silence continued. Meanwhile, small changes began to happen without anyone naming the cause. People started locking doors more often. Parents called their children earlier in the evening. Neighbors checked security cameras that had never been used before. Fear moved quietly, without explanation. The police department felt it too. A younger officer, new to the force, had been reviewing old case files as part of routine work. He noticed something strange. Several reports mentioned the same witness, not directly, just as someone seen nearby, someone who had offered help, someone who had spoken to officers briefly and then faded into the background. The name appeared, again and again. The officer mentioned it to a senior colleague. At first, it was dismissed. The person had never been a suspect. There was no criminal record. He was known in town, friendly, polite, reliable. Still, the officer kept looking. He began comparing timelines. The witness had been in town during every incident. Never late, never early, always present, always forgettable. That detail mattered. The officer quietly shared his findings with his supervisor. This time, the response was different. The supervisor asked for the files. He asked for the map. When the dots were laid out clearly, the room fell silent. They reopened the cases, not publicly. Not yet. Quietly. Carefully. Surveillance was increased around the outer areas of town. Officers paid attention to parked cars. 2 people lingering without reason. 2 routines that felt too regular. Then came another near miss. A woman walking home late noticed. Footsteps behind her, slow, measured, not rushing. She turned suddenly, and the footsteps stopped. When she reported it, the description felt familiar, calm, ordinary, nothing threatening enough to alarm, but enough to unsettle. The police began watching the name that had appeared in so many files. They learned his habits, his routes, his timing. He blended in perfectly. He volunteered. He attended events. He spoke kindly to neighbors. No one suspected him because there was nothing to suspect on the surface. When they searched his background, they found nothing criminal, but they found consistency. He rarely left town. He kept detailed personal schedules. He avoided attention, but stayed present. They needed more. A warrant took time. Evidence was thin, circumstantial, but patience had already defined the case. So they waited. One night, an officer noticed his car parked near a quiet road close to one of the original locations. It was late. There was no event that night. No distraction. That alone felt wrong. They approached. Asked questions. He answered calmly. Too calmly. He said he was resting, thinking there was nothing illegal about it. But the officer noticed something on the passenger seat. A folded piece of paper. A map. That moment changed everything. The warrant came quickly after that, when police entered his home. They did not find what they expected. No weapons. No stolen items. No obvious signs of violence. The house was clean, organized, almost empty. Then they found the notebooks. They were hidden carefully. Not locked away, but not visible either. Inside were dates, weather notes, town events, hand-drawn diagrams of streets, small marks next to certain days. It was all there. The pattern the town had missed for years had been carefully recorded by the person who created it. As officers read through the pages, one truth became impossible to ignore. This had never been rushed. It had been planned slowly, and it had been allowed to continue because no one wanted to believe a pattern could exist in a place that felt so safe. The arrest did not happen with flashing lights or a public chase. It happened quietly, the same way everything else in the case had unfolded. The man did not resist. He did not raise his voice. When officers told him why they were there, he only nodded, as if the moment had been expected for a long time. At the station, he sat calmly. He asked for water. He adjusted his chair. When questioned, he did not deny knowing the victims. He spoke about them in a distant way, as if they were ideas instead of people. He said he never chose randomly. He said randomness was messy. He believed patterns were cleaner. He explained that he watched the town for years. He learned its habits. He learned when people were distracted and when no one was paying attention. He understood that a small town trusted itself too much. That trust, he said, was the easiest thing to use. He did not see himself as cruel. He believed he was careful. He chose people who lived on the edges of attention. People who would not be searched for immediately. People whose absence would be explained away. He said the town helped him every time it refused to ask hard questions. The interviews went on for hours. With each answer, the picture became clearer. The notebooks were not trophies. They were plans. Each date was selected weeks in advance. Each location was chosen because it was quiet, familiar, and forgettable. He avoided chaos. He avoided witnesses. He avoided mistakes. The most disturbing part was how long it had worked. When the arrest became public, the town reacted in waves. First came disbelief. People said there must be a mistake. They had known him for years. He had helped at events. He had smiled at them in stores. Some said he had fixed their fence or helped carry groceries. Then came anger. People asked why the police had not seen it sooner, why no one had connected the dots, why warnings were never given. Meetings were held. Voices were raised. Fingers were pointed, but underneath the anger was something heavier, fear. People began replaying memories in their minds. Moments when they had seen him nearby, times when they had accepted his presence without question. They realized how often they had mistaken familiarity for safety. The woman from the library watched it all quietly. She did not feel proud. She did not feel relieved. She felt tired. The pattern had been real. That knowledge brought no comfort. Only a sense of how fragile the town's peace had always been. The trials took time. Evidence was carefully presented. The notebooks spoke louder than words. Dates matched cases. Maps matched locations. Testimonies filled in the gaps. There was no dramatic confession, no emotional breakdown. He remained calm until the end. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was silent. Families of the victims finally had answers. Some felt closure. Others felt only loss. Knowing the truth did not bring their loved ones back. It only confirmed that their disappearances had not been accidents or bad luck. The town changed after that. Streetlights stayed on. Community events felt different. Smiles came slower. People still waved, but they also watched. Doors locked earlier. Parents asked more questions. The town did not lose its kindness, but it lost its innocence. Years later, people would still talk about how long it took to see the pattern, how many signs had been ignored, how easy it was to believe nothing bad could happen simply because it never had before. The story became a lesson passed quietly between generations, not about fear, but about attention, about the danger of comfort, about how evil does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently, hidden inside routine. The library still stood. The newspapers were still archived. The map was no longer on the police wall, but its memory remained in the minds of those who had seen it. The town learned that patterns do not announce themselves. They reveal themselves slowly to those willing to look. And once seen, they cannot be unseen. What haunted the town most was not the crimes themselves, but the realization that the truth had always been there. It had lived in dates, in places, in habits. It had survived because people wanted to believe in coincidence. In the end, the pattern was not just about one man. It was about a town that learned, too late, that safety should never be assumed, and that silence can be the most dangerous pattern of all. The town would never be the same again, not because of what happened, but because of what was missed. The signs were always there, in dates, in places, in silence. It was not chaos that allowed the pattern to grow. It was comfort. It was trust. It was the belief that nothing bad could happen here. This story is not just about one person. It is about what happens when patterns are ignored, because danger does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly, until someone finally chooses to look. For watching more amazing videos like this, subscribe our channel Crime Loom.